Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to the OTR series London to Brighton charity ride. We have 12 riders so far signed up for it. I'm hoping a few more will join before they start. James is here. Now I'm not taking part in the event, I'm just simply recording it. And I'm hoping everything's working properly. Let's just fire up my software and see. The problem is I've been pretty ill, folks, which is why I haven't been streaming or cycling recently. And why are we not full screen program to 27? There we go. You can see me. I need to turn my lights on for you. Let's see if we can get a bit of light on the subject. There we go. There we go. We're illuminated, and I'm sat at my desk. So I'm going to try and cover the event as best I can. Obviously, I'll have to jump on the bike, but let's. My secondary monitor doesn't want to work. This is frustrating when I'm trying to windowed. There we go. Let's go windowed and see if we can get things sorted. Hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing here. Let's go to live stream and see if we can move this cam link a little bit. Is it going to let me? No. Okay, I'm not really set up for this, folks, so I'm just going to wing it and do the best I can. That seems to be. And we'll jump on the bike and turn the pedals, and then I should be able to continue with commentary. Now, these aren't officially races, but I can assure you the riders will probably treat it as a race. That's what usually happens in these either sportives or charity rides or events. Excuse me. They usually turn into unofficial races. The reason I'm not riding is because I'm still not back to normal. I'm absolutely bunged up after 2 weeks of the flu. So I'm going to jump on the bike and turn the pedals, and then we can start with everybody else. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. So I'm off and running, as you can see. Although it doesn't look like I am, but there we go. So I'll pull over to the side of the road, and what we'll do is we'll see if we can get the software working and catch up with the ride. Yeah, there we go. Now I hope you're seeing what I'm seeing. The front of the race. Let's just let's see if we can check. Yeah, you should be doing it. Apparently it's streaming live. I've just pulled up the live stream, so you should be seeing what I'm seeing here now, which is how many riders have we got in this front group? It looks like the majority of them. Let's just zoom out a little bit and see who else is on the... Yeah, it looks like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got 9 riders here. And 1, 2, 3, 4 riders off the back. So 9 riders here at the front. And the setting, you can see Mr. Wall is setting a pretty fast pace. Like I say, these are not races, but the riders are going to treat them as an unofficial race. That's what tends to happen with sportive and charity type events. So let's go through the riders and see who's in this group. I saw James Ogilvie he's the organiser, James Ogilvie. I saw him on the line, but if you noticed, in fact, let's go back. Let's let's go home to me, and James was behind me on the line. So I think maybe he's probably turned up for the event. Let's go back to the front. Turned up to the event and he's not actually riding it. He just wanted to check and see how many riders were taking part, because this event has actually already taken place twice today. James is putting it on at 3 time slots so that riders from just about every country should be able to take part. The Americans, the Australians, the Europeans and the Brits should all find a slot that fits in with their weekend, because it's taking part today. This is the last slot today. This is slot 3. And then tomorrow it's taking part on the Sunday in the morning, at lunchtime, and then in the afternoon. And I'll hope to cover the final event tomorrow afternoon. Now, it's 83 kilometres, and looking at the speed they're going at the moment, although these hills are going to sort some of them out, it's going to be about a 3-hour affair, I would have thought. 30, 60, maybe a bit less. 2.5 to 3 hours. And I hope I've got the wherewithal to be able to sit here for that length of time, because I really am not very well, folks. So I'll do. In fact, I'm struggling to speak now because I'm filling up with the gunge, which is running constantly. My chest is tight. So as I say, 9 riders in this front group. Let's flick the view around and see if there's anybody, and there's nobody chasing really. Let's work his way through the group and actually see if there is. Yeah, there's 2. So that's your front group, and then these riders are 240 meters behind. So realistically, they're not going to catch the front group. Certainly looking at the wattage they're doing and the wattage that the front group in front of them are putting out, I very much doubt whether these 2 are going to be able to close the gap. You can see a 3rd rider just behind them. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, but he's coming to try and close the gap and join them, and yes, he should be able to do so. So these 3 riders, they can work together. Now, never say never. They may well close the gap, but it depends whether they can gain some ground when we hit the climbs, which we're going to do in about 5 kilometres. So we'll wait and see. Although it looks like this, I think is it Turkey? This Turkish rider is trying to push off the front. Now, if the other two have got anything about them, they'll try to close. Yeah, they'll try to close up and stay with him. It would make sense for them to stay together. I mean, Rodat looks like he's struggling to do that, but if he can join the wheels and just stay with them, it makes such a big difference if you can ride as a small group as opposed to riding solo. So Rodat needs to put in he's putting in a bit of an effort here to rejoin them. But let's go back to the front and see. We got Mr. Miller and Wall. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is doing the majority of the work in this early stage of the ride. But to be fair, we're not going to see a sort out of these riders until we hit the climbs, and then I suspect we'll find out. Excuse me, who amongst them are the climbers. So there's not really going to be a lot to commentate on until we do hit the climbs, because I can't see this group splitting up until we do so. If a rider drops off the back of these 9, he's certainly not going to catch them. He's going to be gone. So all of these riders need to be aware of that and stay within the draft. If you're one of the weaker riders, then obviously stay away from the front, get in the middle, and just suck wheels. And you can see the pace is constantly changing, but it's round about the 3 watt kilo mark on average. With riders dipping in and out of the red, and you can see Lazar there hit 6.2 to get on the front. But excuse me. Now this Gabe is wearing. Let's just see if we can zoom in on Gabe. There he is. Wearing my Team 3R kit, but I don't know him as one of our riders, although I feel at the moment. So thank you for supporting the team. I'll have to find out who he is later. By looking at the RGTDB website, I can find out his first name. So let's keep checking on these riders behind, because it would be interesting. And Rodat has done the sensible thing by getting in the middle and drafting. If he is the weaker of the 3, then that's the best place for him. Just stay in the middle. But to be fair, they're not really hammering it, as you can see from the wattage. And they are falling behind the group in front. So I suspect they're not even going to attempt to close the gap, or at least they're going to wait until they get to the hills and see what happens. We could find out that any number of these 3 riders could be climbers, in which case that's where they'll get their advantage. They'll lose the advantage on the flat, and they'll gain the advantage when it starts to go uphill. As I say, folks, you'll have to excuse my stuttering at times, and when I fall over my own words, it's because I genuinely am struggling to breathe at times. the only reason why I'm covering this event is because James is a fellow organizer and does so much work for RGT. And he asked me quite a few months ago now, would I help him out? Would I cover one of the events? So I volunteered to cover two, Saturday and Sunday. So let's go. That's me. And what I've got to do as well, I think I've set some set some alarms now, because if I don't, I'm going to forget and we're going to get kicked out. So let me see if I can go into my alarm clock. And what time we got now? 7:12. So we need. Okay, that should remind me, should I forget? One of the problems with commentating when you're not actually riding yourself, like I'm doing here, is you have to jump on the bike every 30 minutes, well, before the 30-minute mark, because otherwise you get thrown away from the ride, especially if it's a race. I don't know, I think I could probably get away with it here and rejoin, but I don't really want to have to redraw the screen, the magic road again. So I have to jump on the bike at least every 30 minutes to stop myself being thrown from the event and having to rejoin it again. And if it was a race, you're not allowed to rejoin, so I would just be thrown out, and that would be the end of it. And that's happened to me quite a few times. And you may well say, well, why don't you always set alarms? Well, sometimes like tonight, it's a last minute thing to actually jump on and cover these events. Or, sometimes I'm just so busy with the family and the children that that looked like a bit of a glitch going around that corner. Hadn't been smoothed. But sometimes it's a bit of a rush just getting onto the platform. And then, like tonight, you get on and you find that because you haven't used it for a while, it isn't set up correctly. I mean, you should be seeing it perfectly, but I've got three screens here in my pain cave, and only one of them is showing the picture. So I'm struggling to change views like I normally do. Now, I know Mr. Miller is quite a strong rider. But many of the other riders I don't really know. So we're not going to be able to pick front runners really until we get into the hills. And then we should see who the strongest riders are. You can see if I zoom out slightly, the Swedish rider here in pink was riding off the back, which is a dangerous thing to do. You've really got to make sure that you don't allow a gap and have to keep, like the rider that's now at the back needs to ensure that he's not constantly losing the wheels and having to close the gap, because that can get very, very tiring very quickly. there's no problem in riding at the back of a group if providing you're aware and don't let gaps appear. But if you're constantly having to close up to the wheel in front, then you're going to get tired very, very quickly. And what I tend to do if I can manage to stay with a group like this is I try to ride somewhere in the middle rather than be riding right at the back. But it's easier said than done, especially if the riders around you are pushing a big pace and it's not your natural comfort zone. I mean, I could be doing a disservice here. Some of these riders could be a lot stronger than they look, but the rider in pink, let's see if we can pronounce his name. He's doing what I'm. How do you pronounce that? Helm? Or Helm? Anyway, the rider in pink, as you saw, was dropping off the back and then having to close up, and now we've got a bit of a mini break as they're approaching the hills. You can see that the slope will start to change. The slope is this figure up in the top right of your screen. But all the riders are closing up the gaps and staying together, which I think they'll do until they start to hit the orange bits. Now, if you can see my mouse pointing here, you can see it turns from green to orange, and what that means is that the gradient is rising, and when it gets above a certain percentage, I forget exactly what it is, but it turns to orange, and then the much steeper percentages are the red bits. So where, like you can see right at the end, just before the final downhill section, you've got a terribly steep section, which is going to, I suspect that might be Ditchling Beacon. Because this is the virtual London to Brighton ride, and although the scenery doesn't match, you saw my name on the road there, but although the scenery doesn't match because they're using one of RGT's what's known as a skin, I think this is the European course skin. Obviously, it's not going to match the scenery that you would see if you're doing the true London to Brighton ride. But already now, let's zoom out a little bit so you can keep an eye on it. But already you can see that we haven't really hit the slopes, and the riders are starting to fracture a little, although they're closing the gaps now. This is good riding because all the riders are wanting to stay with the group as long as they can. But my guess is as soon as we hit this first orange section, that's going to change. You're going to find out who the climbers are. So when the gradient in this top box changes from green to orange, you'll know that we've hit this slightly steeper section. Who's that? Nordland. It looks like Nordland is off the front, going for the break, so Nuts joined him, but to be fair, it's too soon. It's too soon to push off the front at this point. I don't think any rider is going to get away on this first section. I'd be very surprised if they do. Yeah, Mr. Miller's actually stating that he's not going to go into the red on the climbs. So I don't know why, because he's quite a strong rider. So I don't think he would have any difficulty on these initial climbs. Maybe climbing's just not his thing. There we can see Now you can see that the green has changed to like a different shade, and it's slowly turning into like a brownish green now. And the slope is going up in percentage. So we're at 3 at the moment, 3.1. I suspect this this first section here will probably top out at about 3.5. So the majority of this group are going to stay together. We'll take a look at what's happening behind them very shortly, because it looks like the free riders behind them. There you can see it's turning brown now, look. So we got into the 3.5, the 3.6 section I told you about. And there, even 4 is the orange. So when it goes into the orange, that's even steeper than the brown section. But it doesn't last too long. I expect they'll stay together more or less. Miller, like I said he would, is having no difficulty staying with them without going into the red. But you've got some strong riders here, so now what these virtual roads do give you is a good, let's see if we can switch the cat, there you go. You can see that they're approaching where I'm pointing with the mouse. They're approaching the top of the climb here, and then obviously they crest the climb. It eases off for a little bit before they start to climb again. So this is going to be a chance for them all to come back together, because nobody really was dropped, although I only count 8. Have we got 9? No, there we are. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we got 9 riders. So nobody really was dropped on this first part of the ascent, but the next section starts off easier, and then it gets a bit tricky for a bit longer. You can see it turning into a more orangey colour. I suspect that may well split them. And if not, they'll bomb down the next downhill, and then the red section, the short red spike, will definitely sort them out. But let's leave them alone anyway, because they're getting to the crest of the climb, and let's see what's happening with these riders behind. Let's zoom in. So it looks like Rodart and whatever his name is, let's call him Y, have dropped their compatriot. Okay, let's switch back around again and use there we go. Oh, and we've had a late joiner. Chryson is a late joiner. Now, how do I know he's a late joiner? Because look at the distance that he's done. If we look at Chryson, which is there, and then you look at the man behind him, Baggio has done 13.5 kilometres, whereas Chryson has only done 3.5 kilometres. So he's a late joiner to the ride. He's putting out decent. And there's my alarm going off. Now what that means, folks, is I have to jump on the bike, turn the pedals, and then I won't get kicked from the ride. So I just do my bit. That should be enough. I'm glad I'm not riding, really. Okay, so Price and Baggio, and in fact we have another rider, Petitquan. Now he's a late joiner as well. Not very late, but Mr. Nice Guy. So another late joiner. So yeah, we're getting. Now this is the front group again, and like I said to you, they would all get back together before starting the next section of the climb, which they're just about to reach now. Let's see, have we got all 9 of them here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. think we have. Yeah. I think I count 9. Or have we got 8? Oh, it looks like we've got 8. Oh no, there's the 9th. Just coming back to them. Now the big question is, can they stay together as a group of 9 over this next section, which is a little bit longer and a little bit steeper than that first climb. So it starts out nice and gentle, and then it slowly ramps up. What is a really nice touch, you probably noticed it there, M Nice Guy written on the road, is the way that RGT have done that. In these virtual magic roads, obviously it pulls the names of the riders taking part, and at various points in the ride it sticks them on the road, which is a nice touch. The first time I saw it, I was gobsmacked. It was, and it does give you a bit of a boost if you're struggling. I mean, I saw it during another one of James's events for the first time, the March Monument series of races, which was a cracking series, by the way. Check out my YouTube videos for commentary on those. But they were a really good series of roads, and I spotted my name on one of the roads while climbing this stonking great hill. And it does give you a bit of a, yeah, it gives you a bit of a boost, I would say. And you can see there's rain's falling now, and you've got puddles of water with rain splashes on the tarmac. So it's pretty realistic. But obviously it's not as nice as the real roads. When I say real roads, RGT have now about 11 or 12 what we call real roads, which are modelled on the genuine real life roads. For example, we have Cap de Formenta in Spain, the real life climb digitized, and that's a beautiful climb. In fact, it's my favorite climb on RGT. They've got the Stelvio, they've got Ventoux. So they've got some really nice real life courses on the platform. Some flatter ones as well. There's Dirty Reaver, the gravel course up in Northumberland. Borrego Springs in America. I'm impressed with this group that they're managing to stay together like this. I mean, yeah, the gradient hasn't gone ballistic yet, but I am impressed that because look at the wattage they're putting out. I mean, Laser was going into the red with 4.8 there, and Wall at the front is hitting the high 3s and 4.1. So not hanging about. I mean, these are strong riders. This is a strong group. And am I right in saying that Wall is an OTR rider, as you can see from the jersey? So he's obviously one of the stronger OTR team members. Nordland looks like he's a true climber, just the way that he effortlessly took the lead there and has opened up a short gap. Now, to be fair, I'm not so sure about the tactics there. Opening up a gap as you're getting towards the top of the climb is going to give the riders behind the opportunity to close the gap. But having said that, they are opening up a decent gap here. But I still think they'll be closed down. I don't see this sticking at this early stage. I think it's too early. But having said that, if you look at the profile coming up, they're going to go down this downhill. Obviously, they'll maintain some of their advantage on the downhill, and then they hit this stonking climb next, which is like a wall. It's very steep. It's only short, but it's very steep. And that, if these two are climbers, if Nordland and Wall are climbers, then the 100 meters they've got at the moment, just over 100 and, well, 100 and, yeah, it's being closed down, you see, by the riders behind. So they've got 120, which is coming down, and which is why I said I'm surprised that they left it so late to sort of like push on. But it could work if they are true climbers on this next section. Sorry about the trees, folks. I'll try and stay with them. Let's see what's happening behind them. There's the chasers, look. So they're just out of sight. If you look there they are. They're just out of sight of the riders chasing. But sure enough, as I predicted, the 9-man group has split up. Now they've got them in sight there, so this is not going to stick. Not unless these two in the front can really, really push on the climb. But I suspect not. I suspect this is going to come back together. The question is, can the other riders behind this small group... I keep changing the view so we can stay with them. It's a very difficult course to commentate on because it's so windy with the trees. I would have preferred them to have used one of the skins with less trees, and then it would have been a bit easier. Oh, somebody's just dropped out. Who's that? Nordland. Now Nordland has got a problem. His wattage has dropped to 1.1. So I don't know what the issue is. So Wall is out. Let's just go to the front. Wall is out on front on his own, but he's going to get caught by the riders behind. Let's just swing the camera around. There we go, look. But the big question is, what happened to Nordland? Is he out of the ride? Has he had a technical problem, or has he just decided he's done enough? I don't know. It's a difficult one to call. I mean, Wall's going red here, putting in a big effort, as is Nut behind him. And I suspect people like Laser and Rebecca are slightly smaller climbers, because they're not that falling too far behind, but not putting out the same kind of wattage. Okay, let's check further back then. Let's. There's a 20-meter gap there, which may well be closed up. But what's surprising me is these riders. I mean, stair climber. He's starting to push the wattage a bit now. He wasn't earlier, but he's starting to push the wattage up a bit now. But this next section, if you look at where the white paddle is on the bottom of the screen and then my mouse, this next section really lends itself to the group coming back together. You know, if they work well, if they take turns on the front and work as a group, they can pull back the riders in front. They haven't got too big a gap. I mean, there's only the two off the front at the moment. Nut is closing up on Wall. Now, they could work together and probably extend a bit of a lead, but I don't know. I think it's too early. And it depends how hard they want to work, because there's a long way to go yet. We're only, 20 kilometers into the event? So another 65 kilometers to go. I think it's too early to be pushing off the front solo. But who knows? Yeah, Nut is just going to join Wall, and then hopefully these two will ride together. Yeah, there he is giving me a wave. I do wonder how many people actually watch the live stream as I'm commentating. I know with some of our own Team 3R events that happens with our riders, like Tim Cook will quite often watch the live stream while he's actually taking part in the event, because he comments to me during the rides and the races. I've really missed not being part of RGT almost a month now, because I just haven't been very well, and I'm still not well. For those that don't know, I'm a cancer survivor, and I have a very, very poor, in fact almost non-existent immune system. So I get every little bug that the girls bring home from school, and this time it was a particularly nasty bout of flu, and I just have not recovered from it. And normally, you can kick about a flu in a week or 2 weeks. I've been like this almost for a month now, and I'm still not coming out the other side. So let's check on what's happening behind. Miller is pulling them back. Now, I said he was a strong rider, and obviously he's back on his favourite kind of terrain here, which is more the rolling flatter terrain. He's a bigger rider. I hope I'm getting this right. I think it's the correct Miller I'm talking about here. And if so, he's a stronger, bigger rider. So it's no surprise to me that he's helping to pull them along. I don't know much. Unless I'm missing something, I don't know who this Gabe is wearing the Team 3R kit, which looks superb, by the way. But I know Laser's a nice, strong rider. I've seen him in quite a few events. Whoops. Not going to go under the road, do we? I don't know much about Rebecca. I've certainly never seen Stair Climber before. I've seen the Swedish rider before, but I just can't for the life of me try to pronounce that name. Not and do it justice anyway. So these riders are really, the stronger riders of this what is it, sextet, are really working well together. Miller is obviously probably the strongest rider in this group, although maybe Laser would want to push him a bit. But they're the ones that are doing the majority of the work in this small group, and they're trying to obviously pull back this fellow. Now, what surprises me is that he's been distanced from Wall on the flatter terrain. And that's really a bit of a surprise, because it's easier to stay on somebody's wheel on this kind of terrain. So I'm surprised he hasn't just got on his wheel and stayed there. But obviously, Mr. Wall is a very strong rider, so I might be doing him a disservice. Maybe he's just too strong, although I don't think so. I genuinely believe, and in fact that's been borne out if you look at the screen and the numbers. Nut is actually pulling him back slowly, albeit at 50 now, but he is pulling him back, and they're going to come back together, these two. And that would make sense, because look at the terrain coming up. Once again, I'll show you with the mouse. You can see where the white paddle is, But just look what's coming up. It makes absolutely no sense to ride as a solo over this next section. And to be fair, even when we get into this this brown and orange section here, you've got the steep downhill afterwards, and then you've got this long section of what we call rolling terrain. I just don't think there's any mileage in riding solo on this next section. But then it all depends whether you've got the strength to be able to stay out the front. And to be fair to, I wish I knew his first name. I hate using his last name all the time. But to be fair to Wall, he's really pulling it out here and getting a decent gap. I mean, albeit we are on the downhill section, so yeah, the gap is going to increase. Let's join Nut and see. Excuse me. And what's happening behind? Yeah, these 6 riders are staying together, which is completely sensible. Now let's find out what's happening with the groups behind. So these 3 have almost joined up again together. You can see Chryson, and he's actually putting in more watches than the 2 guys in front, so he is going to join them. Yeah. The question is, will he push on once he does join them, or will he stay with them? Pardon me. Well, obviously, he figures that they're not working hard enough, so he's pushing on. Now, will they put in a bit of a spurt and join him? And then you've got Jensen. He's 35 meters behind them. So what we can do is I can show you on the road to see what he's looking at. Look, and you can see all 4 of them now. So there's absolutely no reason with the terrain coming up why these 4 riders can't work together. But they're not going to catch the at least I don't think they're going to catch the group in front. So let's now it looks like Baggio has decided to just enjoy the ride. He's not really competing. When I say not competing, what I mean is he's obviously not racing it like the rest of them are. So he's just taking it nice and steady. It's hard to know what Petitquin's doing because he's on the downhill section. So he's spinning a high cadence, but obviously he's not having to put out any decent wattage. And then Mr. Nice Guy, he's on the climb. And again, looks like he's just along for the ride. It doesn't look like he's pushing the boat out here and racing it. And that's the thing about these, whatever you want to call them, sportive charity rides. I call them sportives because that's what they basically are, these charity rides. And you've more than 2, but you've 2 main types of riders. You've the riders like Mr. Nice Guy here, who's, just happy to take part in the event. He'll ride around, he'll do his own time. He might finish the event, he might not, but he'll just do his own thing. And then you've got, like, it looks like Petitquin's he's on the 5% section, but he's just happy to do his own thing. But then you've got the riders that are going to try and go for a good time and race it. and there's no doubt that these two that are just out the front, Jensen and Kryson, they're pushing for. In fact, they're probably hoping they can close up on the group in front. They're not going to do so. They're not going to close 2.5 kilometres. I can say that quite confidently, because look at the. Let's just go to the people in front. These guys are putting out over 3 watt kilos. Mr. Miller and the Swedish man in pink. So they're not going to catch this group. I mean, the front group are going slightly slower, but still pushing up the. Once Miller rejoins, they're going to be pushing 3 watt kilos. Now you look at the gap. Let's join Miller. So Miller's gap to the riders in front, who look like they've come back together, is 340 meters, and they're currently on the. Yeah, they're on the slight slope. But we've got another spiky bit coming up. So we'll have to see what happens there. I should really be following the chat, but I'm not doing it. What's Woe saying with H? I mean, I haven't. So these two look like they've decided to work together rather than trying to outdo each other, which makes sense at this point. If you're going to push on, you do it on the next climb. And Wall is actually now this. I find this a bit disappointing, and it's not Wall's fault, but I find it a bit disappointing when a rider is riding so well and then has to leave the event. Apparently he's got to leave in about 15 minutes. So he can afford to push on. He can afford to actually bury himself if he wants to. And then what's going to happen is if he leaves Mr. Nutt out front on his own, he's going to have to drop back to the group, because there's no way he's going to be able to ride as a solo rider and stay off the front of the group chasing. No way whatsoever. Two riders taking turns, you've a chance of maintaining a gap. But one rider on his own, not a cat in hell's chance. It's just not going to happen. Not unless he's extremely strong. Having said that, Nutt is really doing a good, strong pull on the front at the moment. Looks like he's doing his fair share, that's for sure. So let's check what's happening behind. No surprise, Mr. Miller. That Gabe fella looks strong as well. It's just stair climber. But this next hill is really going to sort them out, I think. Let's just have a quick look what's happening behind them. 2.9, so they pulled back some of the distance. So Jensen isn't giving, and look at the wattage he's putting out, 5 4s. So he is determined to try and get back to that group, you know. Cryson's putting in a 6.4 watt kilo effort, so they're really working hard. Maybe I did them a disservice by saying they weren't going to come back 2.5 kilometers. Let's see what happens. So we'll check back on them later. I want to get back up in front and see what's happening with this chase, because you can see they've got it down to 260 now. I think they're going to catch these two. So he's going red at 4 points. So he's obviously, yeah. Both these two are very strong, evenly matched riders, I would say. Just looking at when their wattage, when the numbers turn red, it means that they're above threshold power. And I always try to use that as a guide to sort of like what their FTP is, their threshold power is, and just looking at these two, they both appear to be around the 4.3 mark. There you go, 4.3. He turns red, and I think Wall does just about the same, 4.2. So I think they're both very even. I mean, he's doing 5 now, but watch when it actually turns red. 4.5, look, 4.4. So if anything, Wally's just slightly, no, 4.2. So I'd say they're evenly matched in terms of threshold power, or the point at which they reach threshold power. Which is why I'm going to be a little bit disappointed that these two are, I mean, 10% look now, 10% climb run, that these two are not going to be riding the full ride, that Mr. Wall has to jump off and say goodbye to us. Because I'd like to see this play out. You could see that Gabe was pushing on, and he's managed to close up the gap, but what's happening now is the guys in front are cresting the climb. They're just coming to the top now. So they're going to crest the climb, and they're going to pull out an even bigger gap as they go down the other side. Whereas Gabe has still got to get to the top of the climb, and he's still on the 10% plus section. So the gap is going to grow, but there's a possibility of pulling some of it back on the next downhill section. But it's a tough call, this. I mean, there's not much in it between these 4 riders, is there? Look at it. Let's call him Mr. Pink. Even he could get back to them up the front. Surprised to see Laser struggling so much, but yeah. Yeah, and you can see there's now, let's just go, there's now, because these are on the downslope, look, oh, sugar. Okay, so I have to get back on, I'll be back with you folks, just let me restart it. Yeah. You see, I set the first alarm and I didn't set the second, but I can rejoin. So let's just rejoin. Come on. Allow me to rejoin. Come on, rejoin. This usually happens when I'm getting carried away with my commentary. I'm focusing so much on what's happening digitally on the road that I forget that I have to actually jump back on the bike myself, and so I get kicked from the event and I have to rejoin it again, which is very disappointing, and I apologise for. But there we go. We're gonna be back in now. There we go. Back to the front. So apologies for the slight delay. I'll let me set the alarms now. It's just I've got so much else going on my phone. I mean, what time is it now? 8 o'clock. So if I set one for 8, let's make an alarm for 20:25. Okay, there we go. Set the next one. And then hopefully we won't get shoved out again. So these two are staying together, but this is and you can see that the gap went from 200 meters and it's gone all the way out to 600 meters now, but all the riders are on the downslope, so this could they could push on, or it could well end up closing up a bit. Looks like they're pushing on, the guys at the front. I'm kind of surprised that these folks aren't really putting out the big wattage here. But then I'm not riding it, so, and it's very difficult to close a gap on the downhill. You're on a hiding to nothing. But look at Mr. Pink. I said he'd probably get back on, and sure enough, he has done so. So, well done, mate. Well done. That's a good ride. What does surprise me is if we just tab down, look, you can see that Lazar's been dropped, and that's a bit of a surprise. But I think I'm right. I think, is it Alex? I think he's a bit of a bigger rider, so perhaps he's better. You know, he's better on the flatter sections than what he is on the climbs, and I think maybe that last climb did for him. I'm only surmising. I obviously I don't know, but when I've covered enough events, I'll get to know the riders a lot more. I do keep a notebook actually. Not doing so today, but when I'm covering races and this, I keep a notebook to make notes in of riders, and then I can sort of like A, I can remember the first names, but B, I can also be more knowledgeable in my commentary when I'm talking about a rider's stats and this kind of thing, because I tend to make notes of riders, you know, what they're good at, what they're poor at, and it helps me to try and give information which is relevant to the ride that's going on. Now, this is a sportive ride. I mean, I still think it's a race, but this is a sportive ride. But when it comes to racing, I'm pretty sure that my viewers really enjoy the fact that I'm pretty good at calling out the podiums, and the race dynamics and strategy of the riders. And I'm usually pretty accurate because, well, for two reasons. I've got a lot of experience. And the second reason is I do my homework. So I try to find out that little bit of knowledge about the riders prior to the race. If I'm only doing commentary, if I'm riding, it's a bit of a different matter because it's very hard to switch about when you're riding yourself. But when I'm just commentating on races, which I really love doing, I would say that I'm pretty good at calling out the strategy and what's happening in the race. And when you've got excellent racing, like the OTR series, I mean, this is an OTR ride, but the OTR series of races are really, really good because you get really good tactics. And when you speak about those tactics while commentating on the race, you can actually see them playing out as you're chatting away, and it's pretty impressive. Especially what happened in one of the OTR rides is that there was two race teams. There was OTR and there was Rasio Racing, and the Rasio Racing rider was like looking like he was going to win the stage because he was the strongest rider. But the OTR boys, of which there was about 6 of them in this particular race, did him over. They just kept taking turns, shooting off the front, making him work really, really hard. And in the end, it was an OTR rider that took the win, purely and simply through teamwork. He wouldn't have won it without his team putting in the tactics they did. But even James joined in. With James Ogilvie. We're doing a stint off the front, and then they worked over. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the rider, but it was fantastic to watch. And if you want to catch it, just check out the race series on my YouTube feed. But it was fantastic tactics to steal the win the way they did. And that's the great thing about race tactics. It's not always the strongest rider that will win in these virtual races. You can actually make a difference. I mean, obviously in real life, we know that the strongest rider doesn't always win. But in virtual riding, it comes as a bit of surprise to a lot of people that the guy putting out the most power or the strongest rider doesn't win all the races. And nothing could be further from the truth because you get really good team and race tactics. Okay, let's check up on the guys out front and see what's happening. So we're currently looking at a 790 metre gap, which is getting towards the serious end of not being pulled back. But if what Wall said is true and he's pulling out of the event, I don't know at which point he's going to pull out, but he said 15 minutes ago he was pulling out in 15 minutes. But we'll see. And if he does pull out, then I just cannot see Nutt maintaining the gap on his own. But he does appear to be doing a lot of the work. And just as I say that, look, you get them swapping places, and although now that really does surprise me. If somebody comes past you and takes the front, why don't you just take a bit of a breather? Unless, of course, he's not working hard enough, and then you sort of like go past him again. Yeah, they're not really. Have you noticed, folks, that the top wattage now, okay, they're on the slight downhill section, but the wattage is sort of like evened off a bit. They're not pushing out the silly figures that they were earlier on. Yeah, it looks like Wally's actually saying his goodbyes now, so it looks like, and he's just given a wave. So it does look like, let's just zoom in on him, does look like this is his final sort of like section. I suspect when it starts to go up the next hill, he'll probably pull out. Good riding by these two though. But Nut is actually saying he's leaving soon as well. You know, in my day, that would be unforgivable. Coming along to, whoops, why are we, have they both pulled out? There's Petty Quinn. There's Mr. Nice Guy. Oh, we're back with Mr. Nut. Okay, let's see. There we go. Let's see. So already you can see the gaps coming down to Nut, who's in front. But perhaps he's easing up as well. I might be doing him a disservice. Perhaps he's easing up. Although this, to be fair, this group would catch him anyway. There's no way he would stay away from a small, hard-working group like this that are constantly changing the lead, you know, through and off. A solo rider can't stay away from a group like this. Not unless he's putting out at least a kilo and a half more than these riders, and obviously that's not going to happen because they're putting out decent wattage. And my pick, Mr. Miller, on the front again. So despite him saying he wasn't going to go into the red, I still think he's the strongest rider on the tarmac at the moment. The only thing that could well sort him out is that huge climb towards the end of this ride. This section here. I'm pretty sure that's going to decide who comes first in this sportive. I won't say wins the race because it's not an official race. Okay, let's see if the keyboard will allow me. Now, what's happening with this fella? Yeah, we're down to under 500 meters now, so they're going to pull him back. But let's check on what's happening behind them. I am so impressed with this rider, Jensen. I mean, I don't know if you can remember, folks, from my commentary earlier, but he was 2.5 kilometers behind. All right, it's only he's only got it down to 1.86, but that's a significant gain when you see that he's riding solo. I mean, this is for me one of the best rides because he's just, yeah. I love to see this. I love to see it when a rider. I mean, I don't think there's any sense in it, but I love to see it. A rider can pull, and look, he's pulling it down all the time. I mean, yeah, could he actually get back to them? Who knows? We're going to find out because I keep coming back to him. But I just love to see that. I mean, Lazar's obviously taking it easy because he's actually freewheeling down this, and it's hardly a slope anymore. So he's freewheeling down this section, unless he's going to pull out. We'll just stay with him and see if he's going to pull out, because he's not doing any wattage at the moment. And his heart rate looks to be dropping as well. So Nice Guy is wanting Pettiquin to work with him, so we'll catch up with those two riders in a minute. I just want to see what's happening with Lazar, whether looks like he's coming to a stop. Yeah, 13. Okay, I think we can safely say he's coming to a stop. Yeah, so let's find out what's happening behind him, and then we'll catch up with him later. So Rodat is at the moment, he's in no man's land. I mean, he'll catch up with Lazar, but only because Lazar's stopped riding. So Rodat is riding on his own at the moment. And Y is It's just doing a steady pace. Now these two are working nicely together. I mean, all right, they're not pushing the boat out, but the call went out, can we not work together? And that looks to be what they're doing. So that makes perfect sense. There's a long, long way for these guys to ride, 57 kilometers to go. So it makes sense for them to ride together over this next section. But let's get back up the front and find out what's happening. The gap's now down to 380 meters. So, and I don't think there'll be any rush, to be honest. I mean, he's putting in some good wattage. You saw there him going into his red. But the guys behind, they don't really need to go bonkers, because they will catch him. It's too far to go, 44 kilometers remaining. That's too far for a solo rider to ride on his own over this kind of terrain. This is more akin to a group ride than it is an unofficial race. Talking about unofficial race, this is actually a charity event which has been put on by James Ogilvie from OTR, and it's the virtual London to Brighton ride, which I've done in real life more than once. It's a cracking event. It's pretty tough for such a short event, and it's been going a fairly long time. I forget when I did it, but it's a lot of years ago, when I was in my sportive phase, riding all the best sportives and even organising sportives in England myself. But it's for charity. It's for the British Heart Foundation, and James Ogilvie, who does all this organising, not just of events like this, but he runs race series. He runs one of the most active teams on the RGT platform. If you can spare a couple of euros or a couple of dollars or a couple of pounds, follow the links in my description and drop him a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, the price of, because for the amount of work he puts in, he certainly earns it. I'm hoping he does well from this event, this series of events. There's 6 over the weekend. Like I say, one in the mornings, one in the noontime, and one in the evenings. This is 7 o'clock Central European time for me, and I'll be hoping to cover tomorrow's as well. So there's 6 events spread out over the weekend that is put on, so that basically every rider that wants to take part on RGT, no matter where you come from, should be able to join. They should find a time slot. I mean, you can see from the riders on the road now, you've got Americans, you've got Australians. I think, is that Czechoslovakian flag there we've got? I don't know. But yeah, you've got riders from, you've got obviously the European Swede there, and Mr. Jensen from Denmark. So you've got riders from all over the world taking part because of the different time slots. And some of these riders may actually decide to ride, more than one of the events. I know James will probably do that as well. He was on the start line. I think he was probably just checking to see who turned up. And I'll be honest, if I wasn't ill, I would certainly have ridden these events. at least 2 of them anyway, one each day. But there's no way at the moment I can risk riding. Let's check up on him then and see what's happening out behind. So we're down to 12 riders, and these are the last 2 on the road. So they've got a fair way to go yet, 55 kilometres. So they're going to be out there a while. Now, it looks like Mr. Nutter's left us. I'm sorry I missed that. Obviously, I was focusing on this group, and he's left while I'm watching these. So they don't even have to catch him. And he did say, to be fair, he did say he was leaving. So let's just check who else we've got then. So this is the front group now. We've got 6 riders. Is it 6 or is it 5? 5 riders in this front group. Come on, page down. So 5 riders in this front group, and then you got Jensen. And look at this guy going. Less than 1.5 kilometres. Now don't forget, he was 2.5 kilometres behind. What an absolute star. I honestly believe he's going to catch them. I didn't. When he was 2.5 kilometres, I said not a cat in hell's chance. But I honestly believe he can catch them. He's just working so hard. I wonder what his threshold is though, because that's the halfway point. He's just gone under the yellow kite, which is the halfway point. I'm just going to stay with him a little while and see when he turns red. Let's see if we can find out what his threshold is. No, he's obviously riding under threshold. So he's not. A good time to catch him was when he gets to the climb. So let's check on the riders behind him. So we've got 12 riders. We've got 5 out front. Then we've got Jensen chasing them. Then we've got these 2. Rodart and Lazar. Now Lazar obviously was part of the front group, but I think it was the climb that did for him. I could be doing him a disservice, but either he had a technical, and in fact he must have had a technical, because didn't he go down to 0? Yes, he did. So maybe he had a dropout. Maybe I'm doing the poor lad a disservice. He had a technical. We call it a virtual puncture. When you have a dropout or something goes wrong with your system and you have to rejoin, like I had to. And then they got this guy, Mr. Y. And nice guy has gone ahead of Pettiquin, but only just. So these 2 could well end up joining up together again at the top of this climb. I mean, this is a pretty nasty climb, as you can see. The 10%er. Let's work his way forwards again. I mean, you can see the gradient there, look. Because what happens with the digitizing of the routes, this is the real GPX of the London to Brighton ride. The scenery obviously doesn't mimic the real ride, because it can't do so. It's just a scenery pack that RGT uses, a generic all-round pack. So it can't mimic the real life scenery, but it can mimic the real life gradients, both up and down, and that's what it does. So what you're seeing here is the riders are actually on their smart trainers feeling this resistance. And I said they'd get back together, and there we go. So these two are riding back together again. These two need to stay together. Lazar needs to stay with Rodart, unless Rodart isn't pushing out enough wattage for him. But it looks like at the moment they are. It looks like they're working nicely together. And then Jensen has pulled back another 300 metres in the short space of time we were last with him. So he's doing an amazing job, and he will get back to that front group. I have no doubt about it. 4.3. So if you remember, guys and girls, I called out our two previous leaders, and they were both tied on around 4.2, 4.3 functional threshold, i.e. when their numbers turned red. And the same has happened with Jensen. You just saw 4.2 there and 4.3. So he's about the same power as the two riders that went off the front and stayed out the front for the first quarter of the race. Sorry, not race, a ride. So it would have been interesting had he been in this ride from the start, because don't forget he's a late joiner, not by much, but by about 12 kilometres. He joined about 12 kilometres after the start. So had he joined at the start, it would have been interesting to see whether he would have joined the two off the front when they went, or whether he would have tried to make a break himself. And obviously you can't stay on a rider like this and keep watching his figures, because it's going to ebb and flow. He's 1.34 kilometres behind now, whereas he was 1.1. But that's because of the terrain. But my guess is that when I come back to him a bit later on, because I'm going to join the front group now, he'll have closed up the gap even more, unless these riders start to push on the gas a bit. And we've got another uphill section coming up, so maybe they will start to. And Miller will probably push it out over this next section, because I suspect he's going to want to use his power on these rolling sections as opposed to the climbs, where he's not going to want to go into the red. Now, the only rider in this group that I haven't sort of spoken about is Rebecca. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he's a rider I don't know at all. I've not seen him on any of my previous commentary, or at least I can't remember if I have. So I don't know the first thing about him. But he's, to all intents and purposes, let's see. He's been there from the start. He's stayed under the radar. He's never looked in any difficulty whatsoever. There's my alarm going off. Means I've got to jump on the bike. Just bear with me, folks. And I will set another alarm for the next half hour as well. Ooh. Oh, I'm going uphill. Right, that will do. Definitely don't want to be pushing. I've got a headache. Okay, so they're on the climb now. So as I say, Rebecca, I don't know anything about him, but he's never, ever looked in difficulty. It's just staying under the radar, and they're the kind of riders that you have to be wary of. Now just look at Miller, effortlessly. Yeah, he's such a strong rider. Just makes it look easy, and he's not. Well, these five are going to stay together at least until we get to this section, this next brown, orange, green section here. And even then, I don't suspect that that's going to be enough to split them. Unless somebody wants to jump off the front. They are up in the pace slightly. I mean, yes, they're on the downslope now, but they are up in the pace slightly in terms of the wattage they're putting out. But I will. Oh, whoa. Jensen. Now it was 1.3, wasn't it? 1.3 kilometres. It's now 790 metres. Yes, it's going to go out because he's still on the climb. So I realise that, but he is closing up all the time. What a ride. Quickly check on what's happening with the guys behind him. So Rodart has left Mr. Nice. Who was he riding with? Oh, he was definitely riding with another rider, wasn't he? Yes, a Spanish rider. And it looks like the Spanish rider's gone now. What was his name? Yeah, anyway. Alexis, I think. Or Alex. Yeah, so he's left. The Spanish rider's left, so he's now riding on his own. This fellow was riding with the guy just behind him, there. So these two would do well to stay together. But it does look like we've got... This is another... You can see from the distance he's done, look, he's only done 6 point. So this is a late starter, which is why he's zooming along, and there's no reason why he can't put in a bit of a spurt and do a bit of catching up because he's fresh legs. But back up at the front, these fellows are over the climb, and Jensen has just crested it, and he's look at the gap now coming down again. 900 meters, and it's falling. So he's really, and you can see he's really working hard. 6.7 what kilos. He's really working hard to try and join that group up front. So Mr. Nice Guy and Pettiquin are waiting for Maruri to catch them, which again makes perfect sense to ride as a group of three, because they're not racing, they're not even going for fast times. They're just happy to take part in the event and get a finishing time. So it makes sense for them to ride together and enjoy the ride. You know, group socially and riding as a group is always nicer than riding out on your own. Unless you're doing what this fella's doing, Mr. Jensen is doing, and that's trying to close the gap. Now it's gone out again, but remember what I said about the terrain fluctuating, going up and down, up and down. So yeah, it's going to switch about a bit. But my guess is that once it starts to go on that longer uphill section, in a couple of kilometres, that Jensen is going to pull this back. Because the front group as well, he's actually having a breather at the moment, but so are this group, although they are on the downslope, which probably explains why they are doing a bit less watt kilo. They're still working pretty well though. I mean, this is a good ride, good group dynamic. This. And after being almost invisible for the majority of this ride, Rebecca now is the man pulling them along on the front, doing his fair share. So I said Czech earlier, but I think it's Slovakia actually. That flag, I can't quite make it out, but it could be Slovakia. I think it is. Looking strong. I mean, Miller's got so much racecraft. He's in the look at him, almost perfectly on the wheel there. Just yeah, that's obviously knows what he's doing. Nice dynamic amongst this small group. So we've got about, I said about 2.5 hours, and I'm not far wrong because we've got about another hour to go, folks. 33 kilometres. So let's have a look. They've done, although, yeah. Maybe a bit more. I said 2.5 to 3 hours, and it's going to be about that. Maybe, yeah, 33 kilometres to go. So over this kind of terrain and with that steep climb coming in, it's going to be the better part of an hour. So over an hour, should I say, more than an hour. So we'll see what happens. Having said that, that last section you can see is pretty much all downhill. Once you mount that terribly steep climb, I forget what the maximum gradient is, but I know it's pretty horrible. In real life, it's pretty horrible. It's something like 17-18%. So that's going to really test them, and I think split the pack. But once you get to the top, just look at that downhill. I mean, that's one where I would be absolutely killing myself, just pushing out the wattage on that. Excuse me, on that downhill. But this is the perfect place for Miller to be. As I say, I'm pretty sure he's a slightly bigger rider. So this is the kind of terrain that suits him. There's no reason for him to draft on this kind of downhill. And he's putting out, he's putting out 3 watt kilos on a downhill slope. Now that's what you should be doing, folks, if you want to try and maintain a gap. That's what you need to do. You need to put out the power, not just on the flat sections or the slightly sloping sections, but you need to be putting that out on the downhill. And that's what he's doing. Constant 3 watt kilos on this downhill. And you can see what effect that's having. Jensen, who was, less than a kilometre behind, that gap has now gone out to 1.6. And they're extending it because they're pushing out 3 watt kilos on the downhill. So Jensen has got to, in fact, let's check on him. Let's go back and check on him. So he's also on the downhill, but he's putting out 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. Well, occasionally switching it up. Yeah, occasionally he's switching it up. But did you notice that with Miller, when I was following him, he was almost constant at 3, which means his power wasn't fluctuating on the downhill. He was basically working like crazy to keep it steady at 3 watt kilos. Whereas Jensen is sort of like, he's giving a push, then he's easing up, he's giving a push, then he's easing up. And that's not the way to ride a downhill. Far be it from me to say that, but I think I've got enough experience to be able to do so. If you want to close a gap, you have to at least match the riders in front when on the downhill sections. At least match them. And if they're a small group, you have to work harder than them, because obviously they're going to be taking advantage of drafting and be able to swap places. So it's not enough just to be working hard on the downhill. You have to work harder. And the gap's gone out. And what I've realised, folks, I don't know whether you've spotted it, but what I've realised is that the graphic on the bottom of the screen isn't working. That white paddle, I'll show you with my mouse, has not changed position. And I just haven't noticed. But it should be changing position to show the leaders and the rider that's highlighted. So I'm going to go back to the front, and I'm actually going to go onto the app, after setting another alarm, of course. I'm going to go into the app and I'm going to switch it off. So let's see if we can... Come on, where are we? GUI, there we go. So full elevation map is now turned off. And when I turn it back on again, there we go. Now you can see where they are, where the riders are. See where the white paddle is? So that was confusing me. And I should have spotted it earlier, but I didn't. What time are we on? 8:40, 50. Okay. you can see from the dots on the road, you can see the white paddle, and you can see where Jensen is. He's the, let me just page down through this group, and there you go, there's Jensen. So see how the paddle, if I page up again, look, so that's Jensen just behind that first group of dots. So he's got this slight up slope to go up, and then he's going to have this next downhill to potentially pull back this group in front. But he really has got to work hard if he wants to do that. And these boys are flying, absolutely flying. I mean, Miller, above, he said he wasn't going to go red. He went into the red there, just putting in a burst to catch these guys in front. And who was it that shot off the front? Rebecca. And again, it's really pushing it. Along with Miller on the downhill. Now they've just slightly distanced not Jensen, there we are, the Swedish rider, Mr. Pink. So they've dropped him by 80 metres. And this poor fella has worked really, really hard to pull them back so many times. I mean, only short gaps, but he's had to work to close those short gaps. And we call it burning matches. In a race situation, we call it burning matches. Because you've only got so many in your box. There's only so many times you can do this. You can put in efforts to close up a gap from the group in front. Let's spin the camera around and see if we can actually see there we go. So you can see the group on the road just going around the corner. Let's see if we can get them all on the road. There we go. And he's eyeing them up and hoping to get back to them. And I think he will do so, but at what cost later in the ride? You know, is he going to pay for this? And that's a dynamic. When I say I make notes when I'm doing race commentary on this is the kind of thing that I would be sort of like either making a mental note about, or I would be just jotting down on paper. Because you can have a situation like this where a rider just decides to ride at his own pace and doesn't always follow what the main group are doing. But he can be a much stronger rider than he appears to be, and you can be caught out by that. And that's happened to me more than once. I've been following a rider and I've discounted them because, but basically what they've been doing is riding within themselves at their own pace. I don't think that's the case on this occasion, but they're riding within themselves, and they know what they're capable of, and so they don't worry if the main group leaves them behind. Oh, okay, on the next rise I'll put in an effort and I'll catch up with them. And the only way you can keep tabs on that kind of thing is to either make notes, like I do, or to have a phenomenal memory for riders, which I don't have. It'll be interesting to see whether the gap goes out or whether he actually pulls it back on these riders. And let's check and see what's happening with them. How many have we got, and are we all together? Has anybody gone off the front? Let's go up to the front then. These are the two front riders, but the rest are just behind them, I'm sure. Yeah, there we go. So you've got 4 riders now. We've gone 4 riders. So we've gone from 9 all the way down to 4. I mean, yes, 2 went off the front and then left the ride. But I have a feeling, Mr. Miller is going to be there or thereabouts at the end of this one. And I don't think you can discount Rebecca. I don't think you can put Stair Climber in the mix because in fact, let's check on him. Are we on him now at the moment? Yes, we are. Oh, wait a minute. Let's just check on the distance that they've ridden then. So we've got Stair Climber, we've got Gabe, he's 60-24. I thought Stair Climber had joined late, but looking at this, let's have a look. No. According to this, no, he didn't join late, he joined. Okay. So all these 4 riders have all done the full distance. And this rider here. Jensen obviously was a late joiner. He joined 12 kilometres after the ride started. I keep calling it a race. You'll have to forgive me, folks. It's just, yeah, I treat these as races. Now he's catching this rider who was dropped. And if those two work together, they could get back. So that could be a target for him to go for. Because it's holding at about 380 metres at the moment from the front group. I thought it was 4 riders. Yeah. It's hard keeping. Where's Rebecca gone? Has he gone off the front? Or has he dropped out? Not another one dropped out while we were away. Yeah, he has. He's dropped out. Didn't say anything in chat, so now was it a okay? I've got to go. That's as much as I can do, or was it a technical problem? So that's one of my picks gone. I expected him to be there at the end, Rebecca, and he's gone. I mean, this is a tough ride, folks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticising anybody that leaves. I think it's a bit sad that people have to leave, but I'm not criticising them because 85 kilometres of this kind of terrain is a bloody hard ride. And that's coming from a distance rider on virtual cycling. I think when you start getting over 2 hours for a virtual ride, you're getting into the realms of pretty hard work. Okay, let's find out what's happening behind them. So we've got these 3 on the front. You can see that they're just cresting that little bit of a climb. So they're going to go down this next bit of a downhill. They're on the flat at the moment. They'll go down this next bit of a downhill, and then we've got that really steep climb. So I'll rejoin them obviously well before we get there. But let's just find out what's happening behind them. I'm not so sure whether this rider on his own would have closed the gap, but the spanner in the works is Mr. Jensen. And if he closes up and catches up with Mr. Pink here, then there's an opportunity to close the gap on the front leaders. It won't be easy. It's a tough ask. But it could happen. There's no chance Rodart is going anywhere. He's in no man's land. He's 3.5 kilometres behind Jensen in front of him, who he's not going to catch because he's not doing the kind of wattage. I mean, yes, he's on the downhill now, but he's not doing the kind of wattage to catch up with Jensen. And then you've got a nice group here that's formed. These four have decided to come together. You've got another late joiner in Young, the Swiss rider. So he's joined late. Let's see if I can highlight him and find out exactly what. There we go. So Young has done a kilometre, 1.35 kilometres. So he's just joined for the last section. Welcome on board, sir. Nice of you to join. And it would make perfect sense for these fellows to stay together. Now, obviously, I'll state now before we even get towards the finish, I am not going to sit here throughout the full event in terms of all the riders coming home. I'll cover the first finishers, finishing group, and then for me, folks, I think that will be enough, because we'll be looking at certainly almost 3 hours of commentary, which I think is more than enough for an unofficial event like this. If I'd been taking part myself, then obviously we would have had commentary from start to finish, because I wouldn't have been up at the front, that's for sure. And Young obviously is going off the front because he's got fresh legs, which is a bit sorry really, because it should really, it could well stay with this group and help pull them along. Because he's got fresh legs, he's joined late, he's got nothing to prove, so he might as well ride with the group rather than ride on his own. I don't see the sense in... Yeah, and of course Nice Guy has tried to join him, but let's just go back. You can see there, Nice Guy has joined him but left behind the other two. That to me just absolutely does not make sense. This looks like another, this is another late joiner, Oust. So he's joined late just to finish off the tail end of the ride as the rain comes down. But let's go back up to the front and see what's happening at the front. Not a lot. We've got these three riders staying together. And my guess is they'll stay together now until they hit that climb. And then that will sort them out. Now, who's you pick out of these three? We know who the strongest rider is, but is he the best climber? I suspect not. So anything could happen, because he could stay in touch on the climb. I'm talking about Miller here. Could stay in touch with the other two and actually rejoin them on that monster downhill. So this could even end up coming down to a sprint. And believe you me, if these three go to the finish, it will end in a sprint. There's no way they're going to ride all this way being competitive. Get my words out. Competitive like they are. And there we are, I've been kicked out again because I'm getting carried away. Okay, we'll get back in. Just bear with me. Okay, come on, get back in. So we rejoin. So that's twice in one event. I'm doing well. I think my record is 3 times in a long event being kicked out. So I'm not there yet. I mean, it's poor. I do apologise, folks. I know it's poor, but hey. Thankfully, I haven't missed the finish. Oh dear. I shouldn't joke about it. I should be more professional than this, but after a few weeks off like I've had with this damn flu, I really don't care, to be honest. I'm just happy to be back in the pain cave. Even if I'm not riding, I'm just happy to be back commentating. It's been tough. Let's check my while we're waiting. Let's check the make sure the live feed is still going. I suspect it will be. Well, let's just check on that. It's been tough. Let's check my while we're waiting. Let's check the make sure the live feed is still going. I suspect it will be. Well, let's just check on that. It's been tough. Okay, so there I am. While we're waiting, let's check the. We're getting feedback. Make sure the live feed is still going. I suspect it will be. Well, let's just check on that. It's been. Okay, so now we'll rejoin after we got the feedback. Okay, there we go. Back with the leaders. So once again, we're here. And as I say, these 3 are going to stay together until they get to that big climb. I say big climb, it's not that big, but it's very steep. And that's certainly going to sort them out. But the big question is, can a strong rider like Miller close the gap if he's dropped on the climb on that next downhill section? I suspect he could. I mean, this is just an uphill slope prior to getting to they've 2 like hills like this to go up before they get to the beacon climb. So let's check on what's happening behind them while there's now he's left behind Mr. Pink. So obviously he must have been way too strong. But he's 930 meters behind and really needs to. He is though. He's putting in more wattage than the guys in front. I say that, and then all of a sudden, yeah. Overall, I think he is. I think he's working harder than the guys in front of him. Mr. Nice Guy's telling the group behind to stay together, so we'll check on them in a moment. But if he's going to do this, he really needs to put in an effort now. He's 960 meters behind. We'll come back to him. Let's just check on what's happening with another late joiner. And that's why Mr. Nice Guy was saying to him, and Mr. Nice Guy's absolutely correct. You have joined late. You should be riding in the group, mate. You should be helping to pull them along. Fresh legs. You shouldn't be leaving these guys behind. That's a bit unfair. And I'm sorry for calling you out, but I just think it's a bit unfair. You know, coming in at such a late stage. Yes, you can finish fast, you can go at your own pace, but you really should be more focused on helping the group. Because these, yeah, okay, so they're trying to stay together, to be fair to them. I mean, Mr. Oost is one of the late joiners, and he's last man on the road, but he's just turning the pedals and enjoying the ride, which is the right thing to do. He's not trying to race anybody. So thanks for joining, sir. But these four well, I'm saying four, there's more than four. These riders really should be working together. How many of them is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So you've got Pettiquins, who's off the back. You've got Maruri, nice guy, Young, and Schmack. And they should be working together. There's no sense in not doing so. They've got 38 kilometres still to ride. None of them are going to win any prizes or going anywhere if they ride on their own. I just don't understand it. Doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I can understand Rodart riding on his own because basically he's been with a group, he's been dropped, and now he's sort of like in no man's land. He's too far behind this fellow to stand a chance of catching him, and he's obviously too far in front to drop behind and wait for people. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But Jensen is just not catching the guys in front. I was hoping he would, but I just can't see it happening now. I think they're getting, well, let's check on them. Let's find out exactly where they are, because it looks like we've had a bit of a change in front as well. We've got Stair Climber and Miller at the front, but have they dropped? Let's have a look. Let's turn the camera. Yeah, they've dropped Gabe. Do wish I knew your name, sir. Wearing Team 3R colours. Big shout out for doing so, Mr. Gabe. Thank you. But as I say, I just cannot see Jensen now. It's fluctuated. It's been, it's been down to under a kilometre. It's now 1.2 kilometre. And I just can't see him closing that. But never say never. I mean, who knows? On this next climb could really throw the cat amongst the pigeons. But I don't know. I'm tending to think that these two are just going to... Now, I'm going to be biased here and say that I hope Miller overhauls Stair Climber for one reason and one reason only. Not because I've got any favourites, but for one reason. I think Miller has been with the front group the whole time, and I'm not sure Stair Climber has. So have they both done the same? Let me check. I could be making a mistake here. Let's just check. Stair Class 70 and 50. I think, yeah, they've both done the same amount of mileage. So maybe Stair Climber was just under the radar. Maybe he was there all the time and just under the radar. So no, I take back my statement. Let's let them duke it out and may the best man win. And I have to say the yellow kit's nicer than the other kit. So this is going to be a fascinating battle once they hit this climb, which they're going to do very, very soon now. So we'll stay with them for a little while 200 meters behind is Gabe. Now, if he's a climber, that's closable. But gap's going out on this downhill section, so I don't know. I'm not going to call it here. See what happens. So 14 kilometers left to ride. The majority of that is downhill. So yeah, we're looking at about the 2 hour 30 mark, aren't we? See how long it takes them to get up this next section, though. This is going to really sort them out. Let's zoom out a little bit. And so 250 meters as they are starting the slopes just before the climb. I mean, they're already on a 1.8% slope, but it gets stupid. I'm pretty sure it goes up to about 17-18%. But you have to remember, folks, it's a lot of years, and I'm talking a lot of years, since I did the climb, did this full ride. I think it was back in the, was it? Yeah, it was in the 80s. So we're going to stay with them just because I want to see what happens when they hit the climb proper, which they're almost upon. And see whether they actually match each other. Now you could see the sign there said 8% as they make a start. So it's going to get steep pretty quickly, but then it gets silly steep towards the top. .1. So around this bend, and then this climb starts proper. There you go, see? 8.4%. But trust me, we're already up to 10. It gets much, much steeper. 11. Now this is what I expected to happen. I did expect Stair Climber to take the lead. I don't know whether he'll maintain it on the climb, but if Stair Climber's got a lead going over the top, I still believe that Miller will catch him. And it's a 16-meter gap, so we'll keep an eye on 15-meter gap. We'll keep an eye on that and see whether he actually pulls out the gap. We'll also keep an eye on what's happening with Gabe behind, because he's 145 meters behind. Jensen is close to 670 meters, but that's too far, given that these guys are already on the climb. Yeah, gulp. It gets steeper, Mr. Miller. Trust me on that. You're not on the steepest section yet. This is the section where it eases slightly and then it kicks up. Oops. It's just can we sort of like get them both in picture? Yeah, I think we can. Although the side on view, you have to admit the side on view is pretty impressive. What about from this side? Can we get? Yeah, we can get them both in picture. There we go. Now, because I've flicked the camera around and the angle, it looks almost flat now. But trust me, you can see it's 10.2, so it's not almost flat. It's just the camera angle, depending on where you have the camera, decides what it look. As they go around this steep corner here, went up to 11.4. For 45 meters. So he's grown his gap, tripled it in fact, but that's nowhere near enough. That's, you know, even if he increases that to 50, 60 meters, by the time he gets to the top, that's not going to be enough. That's my take anyway. Now it's interesting looking at the wattage they're putting out, because you see that Miller, I mean, we know that his threshold is about 4.2, and he's not even trying to get near his threshold. So he's saving something. He's either tired or he's deliberately saving something. My guess is the latter. He's saving something. I don't believe he's tired. Because there's no two ways about it. Stair climber is definitely working the harder of the two. I mean, look at the heart. Well, okay, I'll just demonstrate that. Look at the heart rate. Now look at Miller's heart rate: 158, 175. You know, that's a huge difference, folks. Now he's got it out to 80 meters. If he can take it to 100 meters, there's a possibility, if he can continue working. I thought it kicked up at the end here. Am I remembering this climb wrong? I'm sure it kicked up at the end. 0.6, maybe I am wrong. 11.7, 12. Yeah, it does. It kicks up at the end. I remember it doing so. I think it gets even steeper. 12, yeah, 12.1. I mean, that's insanely steep, folks, after 2 hours 15 on the bike of a virtual ride. That's pretty hard to deal with. But I was wrong about the gradient. I thought it went even steeper. I thought it went up to 17, but I must have been mistaken. I knew it had a kick in at the end, which we saw with the over 12% incline. So Miller's pegging him at about 90 metres. Let's just see what that looks like on the road. Yeah, that's pretty good gap actually, because Miller's right down the bottom there. So he's almost out of sight, and he's going to crest. He's going to crest with 100 metres plus. So he's putting in an effort now. Now this can grow to about 500 metres gap if he continues to push on. But he's got to push on. He's got to crest this hill, and he's got to keep the power down. So we'll see whether he does so. We'll stay with him. To have any chance of coming in first here, he's got to be staying close to 3 watt kilos on the downhill, which is hard to do. Yeah, and look, he's really putting in the big effort here as he's getting over what we call the top of the climb. Yeah, look, he's pushing out the power now. He's doing exactly what I said you have to do. Look how the gap is now growing, because obviously Miller is still on the climb. So you've got to take this advantage while you can before Miller gets to the top of the climb. Let's just switch to Miller. See, he's still climbing. So while Miller's climbing, the gap is going to go out. It's 380, it's growing, it's growing. So the gap is going to grow. But Miller now is cresting the hill as well. So now, instead of growing, it's still growing because Miller's still on the climb. But as soon as Miller crests this climb, if he keeps the power down, I said it would be about 500, it is. It's over 500, but now they're on even footing because Miller's now on the... And watch what happens now. Let's stay with Miller for a little while and see if he starts to pull this back, or whether the gap goes out. 580. Okay. Let's check up on... Yeah, look, he's putting out 3 watt kilo. And so is Miller. So to be fair to both of them, they're both pushing as hard as possible on this downhill. They're not, you'd think, okay, I've ridden for 2 hours and 18 minutes. I'm going to ease off and just let my legs, give my legs a bit of rest after doing that hill. They're not. They're actually doing what, obviously, I say you've got to do if you want to try and maintain a gap, and that's keep the power going. Miller's pegging him at around 600, and slowly but surely it's coming down. The question is now, I wish we could get them both in shot. We can't, obviously, because I can't zoom out that far. You're not going to get 500 meters. So I'm going to stay with Stair Climber just to watch his power. But again, let's check on Miller's heart rate has gone up to 160, so 159. So he is working. Wow. This is a good battle, and it's going to come down to the wire. If they both continue to work. We'll catch up on what's happening further behind later, folks, but I want to stay with these two at the moment. So Miller is pulling it back now, look, and quite significantly. There he is. So he's really putting the power down now. Staying close to 3 watt kilos on a downhill, especially for such a long time, when it fluctuates like this. It's pretty hard to do. I can't stress that enough. It's not easy to put out that kind of power downhill on a virtual trainer. And it takes some practice to do as well. It's easy to get to 3 watt kilos if you put in a spurt, but to actually hold it and maintain it at that level for any period of time, that takes, it's something you've got to work at. You've got to practice it because it doesn't come natural. It's much harder than, if you hit a slope, you can hit 3 watt kilos easily, but going downhill, you have to put in so much more effort to hit 3 watt kilos. Because the natural tendency is to sort of like let the terrain, do its job and ease off, and you ease off the power. That's the natural reaction that you would have most of the time. You want to be easing off, you want to be taking advantage of the downhill. But so who's your money on, folks? Is Stair Climber going to stay ahead, or is Miller going to catch him? There he is, working his butt off. Oh, this is steep down. Oh, yes, he's on. Look, you can see where the paddle is. He's on the blue section, which is blue denotes anything around 9-10% downhill. So he's on the steepest part of the downhill now. And really, and pushing out the watts as well. He's really pushing it here. Look at his heart rate. Yes, he will be taking some recovery, so he'll be getting some recovery as well. And Miller is certainly, let's just switch to Miller because he's just freewheeling now. Now, sometimes that can be advantageous because you can tuck in and get, and get good speed. But it looks to me like Stair Climber opened up the gap on that section. Might be coming down a bit more now. Miller's just going for the tuck and hoping. Yeah, he is. He's actually. Yeah, that's because Stair Climber's not on the steep section. So yes, the gap's coming down. Whereas Miller was on the steeper downhill section, which is why he was closing the gap. But it's holding at about 550. And now obviously the steep in downhill section has finished. So now we're on to the slopes that are not as steep. There's Jens, sorry, let's just, what are we on? Yeah, like 1%. So this is the opportunity for Miller to pull back some of this distance. We'll see whether he can do so. While we're watching this battle, though, let's just check on and see what's happening with. Yeah. So I said I didn't think that Jensen would be able to pull back, and I'm right. He's too far behind now. Gaby can't catch Jensen either. He's too far behind Jensen. So the places as you see them on the road at the moment are how it's going to finish. We're going to see Gaby coming in 4th place. Jensen will take 3rd. I think Miller will take. I'm going to give this to Stair Climber because I do think he will hold him off. My money was on Miller to come in first, but I just think he's not going to close this gap. I just think stair climbers doing the majority of the work here. His work, look, 3.9. He's just working harder. Obviously wants it more. And then and this is what I mean about, we said right at the beginning of the broadcast that it was an unofficial race. You can't really call a sportive or a charity ride a race, but it is. Look at this, folks. This is a race. I mean, you can't tell me that this guy is putting out 3.9 watt kilos after 2.5 hours of riding and he's not racing. Of course he's racing. Of course he wants to beat Miller. That's what it's all about. It's about finishing first. And that's why it's so exciting. I used to love these sportives. And being a complete lightweight, I mean, back in my day, I used to weigh about 55 kilo, which was so light to be ridiculous. But I could climb like a gazelle. And I mean, my training partners, I couldn't keep up with them on the flat because they were elite level riders, Paul and Matt. But I could keep with them and in fact beat them on the hills. And that's where my advantage was. So sportives that had lots of hills in, I used to do really well in. And I just love the excitement of it, the excitement of riding as a group, and then, you make the break on a hill. And that's why for me, RGT, what do I weigh now? I'm about 62. Oh, shit. Shit. Ah. Again. Okay, we'll get back in before the finish. Come on, build the road. Yeah, so what I was saying is I used to ride these events and I also used to put them on. I used to be an organizer. And they're so exciting because you ride as groups, you take the drafting where you can get it, but then, if you're a pure out and out climber, you would wait for the climbs and then you would obviously make your attack and make your break. And then you would try and jump forward to the group in front of you. Ride with them until the next climb, then you would make another break, and you would basically keep jumping through the field, unless it was a course like the White Rose Classic in Yorkshire, which is 100 miles of the hardest hills in that part of Britain, and that's the kind of ride where I would have very few equals because of the hills. They were just so steep and so many of them. There was few people that could best me in those kind of events. I mean, obviously, yes, you had your pure hill climbers. Okay, we're back. Let's get going again. Okay, come on. Let's get going. Let's just turn the pedals one last time. And catch up with the leaders. What's happening with the leaders? There we go. So we're back in time for the finish, folks. I'm sorry about that. And his gap's still 450 meters, so I was right. Miller is putting in a great effort, but to be fair to stair climbers work the harder of the two on the downhill section, and he's not going to get caught now. He's going to bring this one home. I wonder if we can see Miller on the... No, we can't. He's too far behind. So I'm going to switch the camera around so that we can actually see stair climber. Whoops. We can watch stair climber going under the kite, the red kite, which will be 1 kilometer to go. So we should be approaching that soon. Actually, I wonder, because I said this is not a race, I wonder if they'll put a kite in, whether we'll get a red banner. 1 kilometre to go. Because it's not a race, we might not. Let's see whether they do or not. And then we'll catch up with the riders that are still out on the road further down the field. And there you saw his name on the road. So here we go. We're coming up to the one. Ah, and there is a red kite. So there's the banner. 1 kilometre to go. 430 metres in front of Miller. So well done, stair climber. I don't know what your real name is. No doubt I shall find out from RGT later. In the database. I mean, Miller's put in a fantastic ride as well. What a great ride. Well, everybody that takes part in these events. And don't forget, folks, these are for charity, so zip along to the website and drop James a bit of a donation, even if it's only the cost of a cup of coffee. Drop him a donation, because the guy puts in a lot of work putting on these events. Not just these events, but, you know, he's one of the biggest organisers on RGT. And this one is for the British Heart Foundation. So it's for a good charity. There'll be 3 more rides tomorrow. This is the last one today. This is the 3rd ride for today, but there's 3 more tomorrow. And I hope to be covering the same one tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock Central European time. So I hope to join you then. We're going to watch the first few riders come under the banner, and then I'm going to head off, folks, because I've done my stint. But well done, stair climber. And he's even, look, he even went into the red there, so he's even pushing to the finish, as is Miller. Miller is actually closing in on him, so that's why he's putting in an effort. Fantastic ride, well done. Here's Mr. Miller. He can ease up now and just take it easy, although he's not doing so. He's still pushing out the wattage. That was a good ride, folks. A good, struggle to call it a race, but it was a race. So that was a good race. Well done. It was after steady pace. Well, yeah, you didn't go above threshold too often though, Mr. Miller, so you did well. I think, to be fair, you could have ridden harder than what I've seen you ride today. I mean, look at your heart rate. I think in the end, stair climber earned it because he worked harder than you, and I think in reality you could have worked a bit harder. I'm not taking anything away. This is a fantastic ride and well done. Yeah, well done, mate. Now, 3rd place is going to go to Gaby. Or is it? Is it? No, it's Jensen. So well done. Under the 1 kilometre to go banner. Let's see if we can swing the camera around and get behind him again. Whoa, where are we? There we go. There we go. It's always nice to get this finishing view. And even Jensen's putting in an effort like. Well done, sir. I wish you'd joined right from the start. I think you would have made this a very, very interesting contest. Because I have no doubt you were every bit as strong as the riders in front of you. So I think it would have been a fascinating battle. And you're a rider that I shall now put on my list and watch out for in future events. And as soon as I finish this broadcast, I'm going to find out who Mr. Gabe is. I'm just intrigued who would wear the free arcade, because we're looking for team members. So if you are listening to this broadcast and you're not already a member of a team, fire a message off to me and we'll get you signed up to Team 3R. But I've really enjoyed covering this. It's been hard work because I'm really struggling with my breathing and my talking. I'm sorry we've had the dropouts, folks. I haven't spun the pedals, but I just get, I really enjoy commentating when the racing is interesting or exciting, and I just forget to get on the bike. Simple as that. I do wish we didn't have to. Hey. So here we go. Finishing with a flourish and red numbers. Well done. Very well done, sir. Okay. And here we've got Gabe coming in. Again, let's swing the camera around so we can get him. Here's that crazy hairpin. Is it the hairpin or is it just the bend? Right. Yeah. So 600 meters to go. And now we can see the banner. So this would have made an interesting sprint, folks. You can see it's almost, it's a little bit uphill to the finish, but you can see the banner from more than 500 meters away. And that would have made for an interesting bunch sprint, I think. At least I think that's the banner, or is that just is that the bend? Is there a bend coming up before? Or is it the banner? No, I think I'm sure it's the banner. Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm right. So you can see this banner from almost 600 meters away. And I'm going to call the broadcast here, folks, as soon as Garb goes under the thing. I'm sorry I'm not covering the last few people coming in, but I think I've done my fair share, considering I'm really not feeling great. So thanks for watching. And as I say, don't forget to zip along to the website and drop a donation. And on that note, we'll see you tomorrow. Let's see if we can pull up the there we go. Thanks for watching, everybody.